Apparently, there are whispers that there is a possibility that President Biden might reverse longstanding, forever US policy of not recognizing formally the Armenian Genocide. And there's a lot of pressure being put on him by Democrats to do so. We have a bipartisan coalition of nearly 40 lawmakers led by Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Menendez, urging President Biden to become the first US president to officially recognize the Ottoman Empire's Armenian Genocide. They urged Biden to follow in their example, citing their unanimous passage in December of 2019 of a resolution recognizing the facts of the Armenian Genocide, adding that the House that same year overwhelmingly passed its own similar resolution. Now, when reached for comment, a senior administration official noted Biden's statement on the Armenian Genocide as a presidential candidate, adding in a statement to The Hill, he said then that we must never forget or remain silent about this horrific campaign, and we will forever respect the perseverance of the Armenian people in the wake of such a great tragedy. That's good, but you can't say we shouldn't be silent and then he's not gonna do it? Like, is he gonna be silent or is he not gonna be silent? And by the way, there is a source out there saying that he's going to do it. It's just like, for me, that one source isn't enough to say it's definitely going to happen. But Anna, I'm obviously very curious about your thoughts about what might happen.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you regarding the one source that says that it's definitely going to happen. I don't even care if it were 5 sources saying it. I need to see it happen to believe it. And you have to take a more holistic view of the situation. First of all, the fact that the Armenian Genocide is still not recognized by the United States government is just deplorable, and it's exactly, I mean, just imagine it in a different context. Imagine how horrific it would be if the United States denied that the Holocaust took place. And so Armenians feel justifiably that rage that any group of people who had experienced that kind of slaughter would feel if a government, especially the United States government, just rejects that historical event took place. It did take place, and in places like Turkey, if you even talk about it and acknowledge it, you can face pretty severe punishment by the government there. With that said, it is important to understand what fuels the United States government and its decision to deny that the genocide took place. And it's all due to our strategic relationship with Turkey and the fact that the United States, in its endless wars, typically needs Turkey strategically. And so anytime this conversation comes up, we get the same BS from the Turkish government. The fact that they don't want to acknowledge it is really rooted in their fear that they would have to provide reparations for Armenians. And there's also, in my opinion, an ongoing campaign to continue stealing land that historically has belonged to Armenians. One of the more recent examples has to do with Armenian settlements in Nagorno-Karabakh, which historically belonged to the Armenian people. And Azerbaijan has been, and unfortunately succeeded in, taking some of that land more recently. And their argument is that no, historically it belonged to us. But Azerbaijan, I mean, I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know if the United States government is actually going to acknowledge it, and it's because of their foreign policy interests with Turkey.
Yeah, I don't like. I guess it's one of my flaws coming out. A thing happened or it didn't. You investigate, you evaluate the evidence to determine if it happened. If it happened, you acknowledge it because it is dumb to not acknowledge reality. That's what it is. For us, should be a no-brainer. Terrible historical events need to be recognized to make it marginally less likely that they're gonna repeat themselves. For Turkey, it's not you. Like, that seems to make it easier for people to acknowledge bad things that were done in the past, but it happened. It definitely happened. You saying it didn't happen didn't make it any less happen. It takes it from a thing where you would be criticizing the past to now you're also the bad one. Like, you are being a part of it. You could just cut it off and say, here's the fine line. Terrible stuff happened. We're not going to allow it. We're going to acknowledge it. We're going to learn from it. By refusing to do that, you're kind of getting in on the terrible. Not nearly as bad as the murders, obviously, but you're kind of getting in on it. And by the way, really fast, for people who maybe you haven't thought much or heard much about this particular situation, or America's involvement in it or whatever. I get that, but every place has its own versions of it. Like, think about how viscerally opposed to acknowledging the realities of slavery or Jim Crow the right has been, or like the 1619 Project has melted their brains. How they just banned it in Florida. DeSantis banned the critical analysis of white supremacy in the US government, saying you cannot acknowledge that. Is that different than what's going on in Turkey? I don't know. There's been a lot of genocide in America's past. There's a lot of overlap there. So maybe it's easier for us to acknowledge the things that they're not acknowledging over there than the gaps in our own recognition of our history. But we need to acknowledge all of this here. And if we can make it a little bit easier internationally by recognizing it, we should do that too. Especially since Biden said he would, and in the past has acknowledged it. You've acknowledged it. Now you're the president. Do you suddenly not acknowledge it because you're the president? How cowardly is that?
But it's not just Biden. I know that Obama promised to recognize the genocide. He didn't. Trump promised to recognize the genocide. He didn't. Biden promised to recognize, and so far, we haven't really seen action behind those words. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue, and the reason why it's not really a partisan issue is because whether it's a Democrat or Republican in office, the foreign policy objectives don't change. We're fueled by the military-industrial complex. As a result, Turkey's relationship with the United States is seen as advantageous and strategic from a foreign policy standpoint. And as a result, the denial of the slaughter of 1.5 million Armenians in the Armenian Genocide continues to be denied by the United States government. That's the reality of the situation. And also, I think you did a really good job in connecting the dots. The United States has a culture of denial when it comes to the slaughter of various groups of people. And so it shouldn't really be any surprise that trend, that pattern would continue when the US puts its own self-interests that are, in my opinion, not good self-interests, above the priorities or above the lives, really, of and above the lives and the history of Armenians.
Agreed.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.